What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Our Planet Spotlight. We've got Perry Azevedo here. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely amazing. So, it's always wonderful to get to talk to one of the community members, a part of Our Planet, and I'm so grateful. You've been such a rock star with us, and just wanted to say how awesome it is that we get the chance to chat and get to know you better and share a little bit more about you with the community.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Right on. So let's kind of start off. Just, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself.
Sure. Where should I start, man? Um, I currently work as a designer and entrepreneur in a group called Proto Ventures. Proto Ventures is basically an investment group, an investment network that focuses on trying to help entrepreneurs who are, in some way, shape, or form, uh, trying to build businesses that improve lives. We really try to focus on like human flourishing with a lot of our investments and a lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with. Um, I've been kind of in the design and startup space for probably 2 decades. So that's kind of what I do for work, for fun. I've got a family, 4 boys, all young boys, and we do a lot of outdoor adventures. We live in the Pacific Northwest, go fishing, hiking, camping, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That sounds amazing. What a beautiful family you built. And my wife and I, we just welcomed our daughter into the world about a year ago. She just celebrated her 1 year birthday. And to think you get that experience 4 times, you've created, your own little entourage, traveling, hiking around the mountains.
Yeah, and actually it was so the last two are actually twins, so we got a 2 for 1 with that one.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. You must have incredible time management skills to be able to balance, your work, your hobbies, your family. I'm finding it very tough with just one, but it's such a joy seeing them grow up and like what an incredible example that you get to set for them with your spirit and helping out in terms of entrepreneurship. And when you talk about, helping people who are entrepreneurs doing things for good, we met through the Our Planet community, and Our Planet is really dedicated along aligning, purpose and profit, and asking, what if your token could do more? What if we could not only utilize blockchain technology and Web3 to make an impact within that community, but have that community effect ripple out into the real world? So just kind of curious, like what type of groups have you worked with? Maybe you don't have to name specifics, but just what kind of interest areas, and how do you see this bridge between making a real world impact and Web3 aligning so that we can create better conditions for everybody?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in there. Um, some of the various businesses and groups I've worked with in the past. I mean, they've kind of spanned several different industries and organization types. Um, I've worked with nonprofits, churches, the government sector. I've worked with a lot of startups in kind of like the tech sector, but also in like health and wellness, medical. So kind of the gamut. All not all of that has been through Proto, but a bulk of it has been. I think with Proto, because we have really focused on like kind of like our investment thesis is um, getting involved like really, really early with people, so we can help them in those like very early stages, and that combined with like trying to find people who are, like I said, in some way, shape, or form, trying to promote human flourishing. I think those things combined have just led me into a lot of different areas. Specifically, like Web3, I've always kind of been a uh, tech nerd in a little bit. I'm one of those. It's like I have uh, equal part interests ever since a kid, like in art and in technology, and I've always tried to combine those two. So as Web3 started to take shape, in the early days, I was definitely experimenting. with as everybody was, with Bitcoin, and once Ethereum was developed, like that was kind of an eye-opening thing for me. Is like, whoa, we can, write code on the blockchain and that code can be implemented. Like that blows the doors open on what, the possibilities that this tech can do. Um, and so as Web3 started to develop, I think for me the interest just became like, man, like being able to have decentralization, being able to like create protocols on a blockchain that can be for, I mean, the sky's the limit, you know, to what we can build on it. I think I just started to see more and more potential opportunity for kind of what the original vision of the internet was, in the very beginning, which is just like a very like decentralized place where information flows freely, where you can enable people anywhere to not just like be able to get information, but also to be able to take control of that information, data, like all that kind of stuff. I think for me now, with how far we are down the Web3 rabbit hole, I think I'm bullish more than ever with like just the possibilities that people can have to democratize things, to take control of their own data, to not not be in any walled gardens anymore.
And I think one additional benefit is that it connects people all over the world and really allows you to get into opportunities that just weren't available due to geographic limitations.
Oh man,
Similarly, right?
100%.
Yeah, similarly, when you were talking about, getting into like Bitcoin, once I realized like, okay, this is, a public ledger, it's perfect accounting more or less, less
Yeah.
a 51% attack or anything. But like this is a game changer, and just to be able to bank the unbanked that are around the world and be able to easily transfer uh, what's it called, like remittances,
Mm-hmm.
and send money across the world seamlessly without having it take 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever, without having to worry about the issues with pre-existing companies, and just being able to directly send that to someone. And now, as we have like the Ethereum smart contracts and other blockchains that allow for smart contracts to be written on, you can automate a lot of stuff in society that requires payment, arbitration, negotiation, because if it's in the code and you can't change the code and you all agreed on it, there's no problem. Stuff's just going to happen and it's going to go so quick. And when you utilize that for things that make the world a better place, that is really where I think our interests are both aligned in helping out folks in those ways.
Yeah, I mean, the scale at which you can economize and democratize, you know, it's the X factor of that is just exponential. You know what I mean? Like it's we can like you're saying, like people all over with, as long as they have a cell phone and an internet connection, right, can gain access now to things not possible before. And that can completely transform, you know, families, local economies, etc. One of the organizations that I've gotten to do some stuff with is ILAD out of, I think their headquarters are down in Texas. Um, Stands for International Literacy and Development. So what they do is they focus primarily on areas where languages, there's languages that are like underserved or underdeveloped, meaning that those languages like might not even have a written form yet, or if they do, it's like definitely not serviced to the point where it's on the internet. And so they'll go in and they kind of have like two parts to what they do. One is trying to service the language itself and get enough resources into the language so that it can be to the resource level where Google Translate will actually pick it up, right? And then you've got Google Translate able to translate language between all the other ones in its database. So that's like the one side of what they'll do. The other side is they'll go in and they'll help entrepreneurs in those areas uh, build or improve their businesses, not with outside people, but just in their own community, helping them to, create more jobs in the area, which boosts their economy. And the combination of those two things, it's like a game changer. Like one of the stories, my friend who works there, was telling was like, anytime one of these languages is not online, what's happening in the modern era is like, mom and dad won't teach their kid their language. They'll like teach them the neighboring community's language because the neighboring community's language is online, and they want their kid to have like future job prospects. And so they're like, well, you need to learn that language because then you can get online and you can have access to more jobs. Um, but what happens is, as a bunch of parents in a community do that, their language dies out. And whenever a language dies out, it's the equivalent of like dropping a bomb on the Louvre in terms of like their culture. You lose like their stories, their songs, like everything, their histories. Um, so it's cool to see organizations like ILAD just get completely gassed in terms of what they're capable of doing with technologies like Web3, AI. I mean, they're like seeing them leverage these technologies and just be able to like do their mission so much more effectively, like really gets me excited. And those are like the kind of companies and organizations that I really, really get excited about. And honestly is why like I got excited about Our Planet, seeing somebody go into the Web3, well, specifically the NFT space within Web3. I kind of written off NFTs a couple of years ago. Not NFTs as a technology in general, but just the digital collectible space is, just seeing a lot of the kind of negative behavior that was going on, and some of the various, like get rich quick or whatever the various motivations that you kind of see, happen, uh, kind of turned me off to it. But then a buddy of mine that I've worked with before in a couple different companies and projects, Jesse, he's like, dude, you need to check out Our Planet. I think it'll change your mind about NFTs and what an NFT community can be. And so I checked you guys out, and sure enough, it was like totally gave me new faith in building communities online, and even brought me back to Twitter.
No way. You had just totally written off Twitter as well, and it was Our Planet that got you back on the Bird app, huh?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd like totally written it off, but I definitely was not active. I was active on Twitter like in the early days because as a designer and someone who worked online, like in the early days of Twitter, that's what we all used, and I made tons of friends through Twitter back then, and still have a bunch of those friends today. Um,
I
but
bet they
there
were
was like,
happy to see your account active again.
yeah, that's right, that's right. Yeah, so it definitely got me more active on Twitter again.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Like I had never been much of an active Twitter user, and then once I got into NFTs and Web3, and it was like this is just where everyone is hanging out. Like it is
Yeah.
literally the spot where folks are chatting in a global fashion. Because you've got Discord communities, and they're great for individual NFT communities that you're trying to get into in different projects. But to be able to cross pollinate and see all these amazing connections and people who just care deeply about this technology and putting it to use in so many different ways, like the ways that you mentioned, reviving languages, like making sure that languages don't go extinct. Like how much more of a noble purpose can a technology serve, preserving culture? And the fact that we have these tools, we can connect with people who care about these interests. And that's something I've really loved about Our Planet too. Like the type of people in the community who come and who the project resonates with are really good people. Like they care about the planet, they care about people, they want to make the world a better place. And I think one of the ways that you and I really aligned was related to water protection. You said you're
Yeah.
a fly fisher, you really care about local rivers and everything up in the Pacific Northwest. And you and I really hit home because I care deeply about preserving our oceans and marine species. And that was one of the first things that you and I really hit it off about. So tell me a little bit more about like how did you get interested in the outdoorsiness, in river conservation and protection and fishing.
Yeah, so fishing, you know, I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and around there it's like a bunch of lake fishing, bass fishing. There's not as much river fishing, at least where I was, especially when compared to like places like Colorado and Montana and up here in the Pacific Northwest. But we would occasionally take like a vacation to, the mountains in New Mexico or something. My dad he had grown up in California, as a kid going up in some of the mountains in California, fishing for the little golden trout and stuff. When we would vacation in New Mexico, at some friends of ours had this cabin. He'd take me out in the morning. I remember the first time we went on that vacation. It was like super early. He takes me out with some little lightweight poles, out in the creeks in the mountains. And as a kid, that was just such a magical, thing. You're going with your dad, and like, it's a new experience. And being this kid from Texas, where it's not Florida flat, but it's pretty flat, at least where we lived. You're in these mountains and you're seeing like clouds at eye level, like that kind of thing. It was just like, I just remember uh, that that kind of experience is just like super magical, and loved fishing with my dad, the few times that we went on these vacations. And so fast forward, I mean, I kind of went through a previous life where I was trying to be a musician, my teens and my 20s, and trying to build a career, that way, before I decided to really dig in uh, to building a career kind of in tech and design and stuff. But once I had been in tech, I think just the nature of being always on a computer, living in cities. My wife and I lived in Seattle for 10 years, and New York for a couple years, and even did a year stint in Chicago. During kind of like that period of life, some buddies of mine introduced me to fly fishing, and the first day that we get out in the river, it just took me back to that, those times as a kid, with my dad. So there was like multiple levels, I think, and multiple reasons why I got into it. Um, there's the nostalgic part. There's the escaping, the digital stuff, and standing in a river, feeling the current, around you, kind of becoming one with nature. That was a huge draw. And then fly fishing itself, as a musician, there's a very like rhythmic, time based component to have fishing that way, which just totally spoke to me. So yeah, that's kind of the story of how I got into fishing. I am one of those people that when I get into something like that, I just get really into it, and I went on a deep dive, and very quickly, um, you know, started to not just like love fishing itself, but like really get into the fish. And since we live in the Pacific Northwest, we have a lot of salmon, and I like eating salmon, so I was like, well, maybe I should try to catch these things. And as I, started studying them, trying to figure out like how to catch them, I just started learning more and more about the rivers that they, come back to spawn, and all the different things that go into them being able to thrive and survive. And a lot of our runs have they're a shadow of what they once were, and especially steelhead up here. Like steelhead has been really struggling, and so as I continue down that path of just studying about this stuff, it really opened my eyes to not only how much rivers being healthy, are important for these fish's survival, but started to realize how like connected it is to even like our our survival. I mean, the healthier our rivers, the healthier the watersheds that they, are in, and the healthier the entire ecosystem. So that's kind of, the journey I went from, first just like an activity of fishing to actually caring about these species that I'm, catching, and then starting to care about the actual rivers and the watersheds. So now where we live, there's a couple different organizations that um, I stay involved with. There's a couple that are more river based, and then there's some that are even local based here. We have one whose entire purpose is trying to buy up as much land as possible for the sole purpose of like restoring habitats, or like not locking them down because they'll do is they'll usually keep them open for public use, but trying to get like key pieces of land that shouldn't be developed because they're still wild or they're right next to areas that are wild. So I do work with them as well as a lot of fishing communities around here.
Wow, and it's very obvious, how much you care about all of this and your extensive knowledge and just the passion that you share when you speak about this stuff. And I found myself strongly resonating when you were describing the scene of, standing in the river, feeling the current. I like literally could feel the current on my legs as if I was there. Like you did a really amazing job painting that picture. And what I find is that your story of like just being in nature and getting to learn about the different fish is really analogous to like why I got involved in ocean conservation and protection. When I'm out there in the water free diving, I'm filming all types of Hawaiian marine species and life all around the oceans. And when you talked about buying up land near rivers that helps protect the waterways and allows the salmon run to grow and flourish, it reminded me of this fact that like roughly 26% of the entire US like coastline and area, the oceans, are actually marine protected zones. And just the amount of effort that's needed to declare different areas as protected zones so that the species can thrive, that the fish populations can rebuild and grow. Because I was having this conversation last night, this position that oftentimes humans think that they, like, nature is something separate. It's like
Yeah,
we're in here in our house and nature is out there, and not taking into account that like we are nature. The technology that we build has an impact on the planet, has an impact on our ecosystems. And as we're building up technologies, like blockchains, and the egregious amount of energy that proof of what's
work.
the proof of work. Oh my gosh, I couldn't think of that for a moment. I was like, oh my gosh, it's not proof of stake. Please don't mess this up. Like this is your area of knowledge. So yeah, so the egregious amount of energy that proof of work mechanisms have on just running the blockchains, and for ETH to switch to proof of stake roughly reduce energy usage by 99.7% or something, some ridiculous dramatic cut in energy, is only going to allow these technologies to be better for the planet, but also be better for people's pocketbooks. And as we switch off of coal and fossil fuel based energy to more renewable energy, it's only going to be better and better. And our planet is really cool because they like to bring awareness of these issues, really being at the forefront of technology and our planet and making sure that we're advocating for activities that really optimize how well we can integrate this technology into our ecosystems, like ecosystem in like the biological sense and like nature, in a very harmonious way. And a lot of our community members are in the same vein, like whether it's talking about AI, equitable wealth generation, just gender, racial equity, like all these different areas, mental wellness. It's really inspiring to be around a bunch of people who are smart, like yourself and many of other of our community members, but also like care about the planet and care about these things. It's really really encouraging.
Yeah, I love what you said about the like just the integration, right, of nature and humanity. I feel like that duality, I guess is probably the word, like the duality of uh, you know, human against nature, or like there's a kind of like prevalent story that is told sometimes in our society of like, human is a blight on the face of the earth, and we do all this like crazy horrible stuff, and that kills nature. And I'm not gonna like say we don't do terrible stuff as humans, like just look at history, but it's like that's not the full story, right? Like there's a an evil and a good side, and we all have that in us. And so we are part of nature, and so we can choose to, yeah, like be greedy and build businesses or treat people in such a way where it's harmful, or we can choose to like treat people in such a way where we're looking out for the best for them as well as ourselves and nature as well, right? And it's like the more we do, the more we choose like the good side, the light side as opposed to the dark. To use like Star Wars analogy, like the more we choose the light side in business and in our relationships and just in everything we do, it's just all connected, you know? It's like we are part of nature and we came out of nature. Like, hello. It's like
Yeah,
it's
100%. We're just the
yeah,
ones to
it's
figure out how to, make a wheel and utilize like a turbine and develop all
yeah.
these technologies. It's like,
It's just so integrated, and I think sometimes we forget that, you know?
yeah, 100%. And these questions about like, what is like sentience, like what is humanity, like what is nature are going to be at the forefront of conversations as AI dramatically enters
Yeah.
and very, very quickly enters our society. So, one of the questions I was thinking about, preparing for this is like, what is one way that you would love to see AI get integrated to having a positive impact on our rivers or our lands or some area in that regard?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, I mean, to me, AI is not, the as big of the scary, thing that some people make it out to be from science fiction. I think it has, like any tool, the potential for negative, but it's a tool. So I think one of the things I really like about um, a lot of the ways in which I've seen AI used so far is its ability to take just giant data sets and be able to very quickly like find patterns. Um, in such a way where we can like do really cool stuff with that. Um, Water usage is becoming a really big issue like all over. I mean, even here where we have so much water in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, the Columbia River, I forget if it's like the biggest river in the United States by volume or second biggest or something like that. But it's like it's a lot of water and like that's not the only water system, but that's like the main one, right? Like a bunch of our tributaries all dump into that, and at least on my side of the mountains. And you'd think we wouldn't have issues um, with water, but we're seeing it even here. And a lot of that has to do with just how we're using it and how inefficiently we're using it. Right? We we use it for our agriculture. We use it for producing products. We use it in restaurants and homes, and just all kinds of different uses. What I would love to see is I'd love to see AI applied to a lot of the ways in which we're using water, the systems that we have to see like, dude, how can we, um, reconfigure our usage in such a way where um, we're saving more, because I've seen like even just like little ways when you get engineers involved, like for example, like the orchards around where we live, we've got lots and lots of like apple orchards and cherries as well as vineyards, um, and one of the cool things that I've been seeing is engineers coming in and trying to completely reconfigure how water is taken out of a river, used in the orchard, and then put back in the river, whatever's not used. And they've been able to do things where they're using like a fraction of the water that these old systems used to use, and yet get more water to the fruit, which is crazy. It's like more water to the fruit and less overall water being used, and then therefore like more water is like staying in the rivers, and so the rivers are therefore like staying cooler and staying more oxygenated and that kind of a thing. So it's like, what else can we do like that in terms of our water usage by leveraging AI? That would be, I mean, that'd be like really rad to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as you were talking, I was imagining like figuring out the most optimal way to route like piping into people's houses and doing all the city infrastructure and planning and just like optimizing how well we can design cities going forward.
Hmm.
That I think is really, really cool. But since you brought up apples and cherries, a fun question popped in my head. Are you more of an apple pie person or a cherry pie person?
Oh, apple pie. I
Yeah.
like I love eating cherries. Now, growing up in Texas, I hated them because most all we had was like maraschino cherries, which are gross. Um, at least
Right?
you know the bright red ones that come out of a jar, right?
In
But
that
we
syrup.
oh gosh. But yeah, we moved here, and it's like I was introduced to Boppins and Bangs and Vans and Rainiers, which are like the bright yellow and red ones. I fell in love with cherries, but in a pie, no, 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 apples.
I got you. Yeah, I grew up in Michigan, and Michigan has both cherries and apples as well, and the Great Lakes over there. So water and talking about like how do we conserve our water? How do we make sure we don't pollute these lakes? Because some of the lakes are cool, but it's like if I ever talked about going like swimming in Lake Erie, people are always like, you might not want to do that. I mean, like there was this lake
Yeah,
I
right.
grew up near called Lake St. Clair, um, and everyone's like, don't go swimming in there,
Yeah,
and it's like I want
yeah.
to live in a world where we don't have to say that.
Right.
Like even where I'm at now in Texas, a lot of the lakes around here, they're like, you don't really want to go swimming in there because the bacteria levels are too high. I'm like,
Yep.
clearly we can probably figure out how to solve this.
Yeah.
Like let's reassess some of these infrastructural problems that have arisen through a new
Hmm.
lens of just putting this data in, coming up with unique ways to solve these problems, and just having these AI assisted models to not only figure out a cool solution based on a multitude of data, because the thing reads the entire internet, and then also designing the programs so that we can optimally enact those systems. And just like the overall efficiency, like I'm a maximalist of efficiency. Like if we can design a process like you were talking about with the water usage that adds more water to the plant, uses less water overall, like that's obviously the win right there because there's this threshold of water that you need. And if you go over it, you're wasting it, you're going to reduce the quality of the product. If you go under it, you're going to reduce it. And it used to be, just that was the farmer's expertise. They're in the fields all the
Yep.
time figuring it out.
Right.
They got that local knowledge,
Yep.
but sometimes we get blind spots as humans. We're fallible. And just like in any technology, if we can have a way to kind of check our assumptions and figure out a new system to put in place that is objectively better, I think we should all be striving to do that. And when you brought up at the beginning of the conversation how you were kind of turned off to NFTs at the beginning because like the get rich quick, the scammy behavior, kind of the general degen nature of it. And while I certainly got into NFTs in general for some of those reasons, because I'm a bit of a degen myself in that way, just trying to figure out what that next 100x play is, to see a project like Our Planet wanting to utilize Web3 for good was really, really refreshing because my background is in nonprofits. Spent the last 5 years working in the nonprofit space and the political space, trying to enact laws for animals that were helpful and made their lives better. Trying to advocate for the protection of animals and everything. So I was always driven from that purpose point of view. And that's what really drives me today. And I think as this space evolves, we'll start to see more and more of these types of projects that aren't just obvious pump and dumps and obvious like rugs in the space because the bad act like people get used to that. The bad actors will find something else to do that they can scam people on, and then the projects with real integrity will be sticking around. And I'm not like trying to call out any specific projects or anything. I'm just speaking about the space in general. And we'll get to a point where we have better wallet security. It's easier to use. And the underlying principles of this technology are just kind of like integrated. Like people don't know they're using whatever protocol runs your email,
Right.
but they know how to
Right.
email. You know what I mean? So I'm really excited for the future to get to that point. And just kind of curious, like what would you like to see more of in the Web3 space that you see maybe a little bit of people doing, but would really like to become like the standard, if you get what I mean by that question.
Hmm. Maybe elaborate a little more. Like, are
Yeah,
you wondering like specifically or?
yeah. So to expand a little bit on that, like, what do you think are some of the like best utilities that you've seen for blockchain technology, and some of the really great projects that are out
Well,
there right now?
well, I mean, in terms of like some use case or utility, one thing I really, really want to see, and there's a group of people I know that we've worked with within Proto that are actively working on this kind of stuff. But I want to see like what is it called? I think it's sovereign identity. Is that the correct
Oh,
terminology?
that sounds.
Self-sovereign. That's what it is.
Oh,
No, no.
got you.
Self-sovereign identity. Excuse me. But basically, it's where you own your identity, right? So and as we got further and further into Web 2, right? What happened was we had the centralization that happened right around data and just kind of how we do commerce on the internet. Now that was kind of a necessity that kind of like ended up having to happen in order for um, the various technologies that were being built during Web 2 to really get mass adoption. But then the end result of that is like you have Facebook owns like a bulk of the social data, and Google owns almost all the search, and and then you have all these like fractured systems. So like something like your medical history, all your medical data, that has been like one of the biggest, at least here in the States, one of the biggest pains in the ass to like, do you want your data? Where do you go get it? You can't just get it all from your doctor because it probably exists in several different systems, all of which don't exactly talk to each other all the time. And if you want to get some of that medical history or medical data and take it over to another hospital, it's like you've got to jump through hoops to in order to get that to happen. Um, so you know, web blockchain technology specifically, and being able to like build decentralized protocols got me really excited because I could envision certain things like, oh my goodness, like if you were able to have a like self-sovereign identity that you control, right, you could then have lots of different things attached to that, like your medical history, and you could own that data and like everything medically related, right, to you could then permission out to whoever you want, and you could also choose what they get. So it's like when you go see your eye doctor or your dentist or your regular doctor, and they're like, "Hey, I need to get X, Y, and Z of your medical history." You can be like, "Oh yeah, great. Here, let me give it to you." Or I'm going to give you X and Y, but I'm not going to give you Z, right? Just that level of control and that ability to like own that data and be able to have full control over who gets to see that and who gets access to that is huge, and something that Web 3 totally can enable. So yeah, I'd say that's one of the biggest things I'm excited about. And you know uh, being in a group like Proto Ventures where we get a lot of access to seeing new companies rising up, and trying to attack problems like that. Like I am getting to see several companies that are attacking these kinds of problems with blockchain enabled solutions in all kinds of verticals, and that makes me really hopeful and really excited for the future.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I'm like imagining just like the quick and easy, like click a checkbox QR code generator for your medical data, and then it generates a QR code that the doctor just scans and is like, boom, got it all. And that's like your physical or your digital consent to
Right.
sharing that information. And if there was like an app where it just kind of stored all of my data, like here's your search history tab, here's your YouTube videos tab, so that it wasn't outside entities owning things that I've done and my actions, more or less, because it's like if I
Yeah.
watch a YouTube video, there's a record of that. And where does that data go? How do I get that data? It's exactly what you were talking about. And I'm in favor of that. And as you were talking about it, I had the idea of like, dual citizenship. Like you can be a citizen of like Canada and the United States, but what about like a dual citizen in virtual nations?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So like if you got like a dual citizenship, it's like I got a citizenship for our planet and the United States of America, and I got my passport, so I can access either.
That's not far off from, a possible future that we might be headed towards.
Right, and we're actually already seeing that. As you were talking, I searched, and there's this small island nation called Tuvalu, and they're set to become the first virtual nation in the metaverse. And the reason that they made this declaration is because if the if everyone's right about like sea level rise, which they likely are. There's pretty good consensus on that. Tuvalu has announced its plans to create a digital version of itself in the metaverse to preserve their land and culture. Because at high tide, up to 40% of its capital is underwater, and they
Mm,
expect that the island will be uninhabitable in the next 50 to 100 years. So, like
mm,
you were talking about earlier, with being able to preserve language, we can now preserve historical states where we're not looking back at a textbook and being like, this was the Roman Empire or whatever. This was this area, and we have like these maps and these crude details. It's like, no, we're gonna have digital records that these things existed, and those the that culture and that information is able to live on in a very different historical context than it is before. So like we have like Renaissance festivals, but like no one's actually living like the Renaissance these days, But we in the future, 150, 300,000 years from now, we're going to have all this data still probably if we don't really mess things up as a species. So the idea of like these virtual citizenships I think is incredibly fascinating, and we're already seeing I think the foundation of these NFT communities and these token gated communities being the I don't know, like the test run, I think of that. And that's not to speak too hyperbolically, but like these these virtual quote nations, they're probably not going to be part of the UN or anything, but they're already founding. These communities that can have generations of people involved in them are being founded right now.
yeah, I think there's definitely some interesting experiments happening in kind of like, yeah, with the NFT communities. I think also DAOs, right? Like we've been running some very interesting experiments with the various DAOs and like how to do governance, right? Like how to like congeal around an idea or a philosophy or something and actually get stuff done, and it'll be interesting to see how all these various experiments play out because um, we could have a future where it's like, well, why do you even need nation states? You know what I mean? Like if if a company like Yuga Labs can form from a silly ape uh, you know picture project and then become one of the fastest growing uh, like biggest new companies to form, right? Where they've got like lots of capital at their disposal, and now they're able to grow into a very powerful like organization and company. I think that's a good proving ground for like what's capable, and so it's like, well, what else is capable when you get community and momentum and dollars, all kind of congealing and heading in one direction. I think it does raise a lot of like questions around like what is who's going to hold power in the digital future? You know what I mean? We've seen how corporations have become just so gigantic and so powerful that now it's like it's kind of hard for nation states to completely control corporations. I remember, I forget the name of the show. There was some Canadian show about 10 years ago or so. Oh, Continuum, that's what it was. Where they like it was like set in the near future, and like they imagined a world where the corporations actually ran the world, and your nation states were at kind of like beck and call to the corporations. And I remember thinking that was like, oh wow, yeah, I could see that happening. That's totally seems like how we're headed. But now with like what you're saying, just how these communities can form and it kind of makes me wonder like, oh, I wonder what it would be like to have in the future some kind of, maybe it's all around brands, right? Like the brands become your biggest entities that exist, and memberships within the brand communities is citizenship, and everything else kind of has to like be at the beck and call of the brands. Who knows?
Yeah, it's wild, and we are in this very interesting experiment right now where we're trying out all these different things. And like looking at current company market value, it's like Apple, at 2.2 trillion dollars is like 2.1 times the GDP of
Yeah,
Mexico, or
yeah,
Microsoft having $2 trillion is like one Italy.
it's
It's
crazy.
incredibly fascinating to see this evolution of how companies and the interactions of those companies and the actions affect our planet compared to nations. And now with the rise of what people are forming right now, virtual nations, I'm really excited for the future and how it shapes up. And the world is going to get very different very quick, especially with Chat GPT being the fastest uh, project to onboard. What was it, like 100 million users? Was that the right number?
I don't remember, but yeah, it's watch out Google, because yeah, it's we've got some amazing technologies that are blowing up, that's for sure.
Right? Yeah, it says it right here. ChatGPT, more than 100 million users within the first 2 months of its launch. Like, we
Yeah.
have the ability now to connect so many people so quickly on really interesting things. And I'm only looking forward to seeing how it evolves. And especially with what, our planning is aiming to do with the tokenization of real world assets, and how we can utilize
Hmm.
um, just that fractionalization and the tokenization to have a positive impact, allow access to opportunity, and create economic systems that just weren't, and financial products that just weren't available before. So I'm incredibly, incredibly excited for the future. And yeah, I think this is a really cool and exciting high point to kind of wrap things up on. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? We really appreciate you being a part of the our spotlight. We're so excited to feature community members like you. We featured Eternal Phoenix, Future Sites a while back, and we're going to keep featuring members of our community because we got some really cool folks, and they're really smart, intelligent. They got incredible stories, and we love chatting with them. So just any final thoughts?
Two things. Working with some, Jesse, I know is part of the community here, and a lot of the people have heard what he's working on. I've been working with him on this project called Alfie. For those who don't know what that is, basically, we're trying to bring transparency um, to the NFT digital collectible space. So we're creating a free database that basically all the biggest and medium size NFT projects are going to be on it, and have they're going to be like over the course of the next several weeks and months, updating their pages on there to kind of be like a Wikipedia for each project. The goal is to basically bring transparency and accessibility to digital collectibles. So hopefully there's less rugs, and bad actors. Uh, it will become very hard to hide as a bad actor when we launch this thing, and so people will be able to go there and find out about any project that they're interested on. And if that project's not on there, they might be a little more hesitant to get involved until it gets on there and they can find out more about it. That's kind of the goal for it. So I'm excited to launch that. We're going to be launching it in private beta, I think, next week, and um, it's very very quickly gonna grow with all the projects we already have lined up on it. And then the other thing, I'm launching a company with two buddies out of Louisville. It's related to rivers because it's a fishing thing. It's called Guidebook. We're going to basically be trying to make it easier for people to find guided trips. We're starting with fishing, and then the goal with that one will be to expand into lots of other outdoor sports. So you can find guides, whether it's whitewater rafting, hiking, um, bird watching, photography, hunting, you name it. The goal is just to connect more people with the outdoors. So that's another project I'm involved with and really excited to be launching soon.
That's epic. Yeah, big shout out, Jesse. We appreciate you. And yeah, just That sounds cool. I wish you incredible luck in those endeavors. Love that you're a part of the Our Planet community. Appreciate you so much, Perry, for sharing your experience. If you made it this far in the Our Planet Spotlight, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can head over to Twitter, give us a follow on there. And yeah, we're all over social media, Our Planet NFTs. Appreciate all of you and hope you have a fantastic day. Aloha and see you around. Take care.